All right, welcome to the EsportsNext Podcast. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Darren Glover, VP of VaynerSports. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me here. It's laughing because it's like podcast people can just like within 2 seconds go from
talking to you to in the zone
podcast to just being immediate into like setting up the podcast. That's skill and talent.
That's it. Thank you so much for recognizing that. Yeah, I've love being a host, and over the pandemic, I was basically like a game show host for people, and I loved getting into the zone and having that switch. It's very good because I don't think I could be like this high energy all day, and you don't want to have it turned on all the time. Yeah. But it is good to have and to be able to switch into it, and I'm glad that you recognize it. So you work for Gary V, correct?
I do, yes.
So what is it like working for the man?
I work for a Gary company, right? But
yes,
he's got so many entities, so it's not like I'm checking in with him on a daily basis on anything. But I work more closely with his brother AJ.
Yes, AJ, yeah.
AJ Vaynerchuk is the CEO, co-CEO at VaynerSports, and then Gary's our chairman. But yeah, working at a Gary V company is kind of, I feel like, what people think of it. It's very like entrepreneurial. There's a lot of freedoms. We do things differently and think things differently than maybe other places do. I would say VaynerSports specific as a business entity is like what makes us most unique is that we're boutique agency, especially in the gaming side of representing talent. It's like super boutique, but we have like very strong muscles, so to speak, if that's the analogy of like a lot of people that go to the WMEs and CAAs and UTAs of the world, they go there because of how strong they are in just overall connections, relationships, opportunities. And then you'd go to a boutique place to get a little more personalized services, but normally that's the give or take.
Yes.
But I think what makes us unique is that we've got the muscle of a large agency firm, but we come with it of like very boutique talent nature and how we manage and service clients.
I love it. So it's much more of like it's like an inviting environment. It's very comforting, and everyone's encouraging everyone.
I mean, I only have 3 clients in the gaming space. I mean, I laugh about it. We're like, my counterparts were like, I hate the term and I don't like calling myself an agent, but like if I'm sitting next to somebody on an airplane to just like get my point across, it's like, I'm representing like an agent talent. But I'm a marketing guy. Like that's who I am. I say I represent heartbeats. So the idea though of my counter agents that get the 4-year, $400 million contract negotiation deals, I don't get that, unfortunately. So all my deals are kind of like with what we eat from a marketing and branding and sponsorship partnership side.
Yep.
But it's the level of care that I think a boutique shop provides for more of like the life of the talent, not just the dollars that you can make them. That I think makes the boutique shop a little different.
That's fantastic. Yeah. You also represent Bugha and Clix, correct? Fantastic. What is it like working with them?
Both super different. I think it's like a little bit of the nuanced nature of the gaming space where like we try to bucket everybody into just like a limited amount of, they're just Fortnite gamers and creators.
Yeah.
But going back to the idea of like, if you actually look at the human of who they are, they're 2 completely different types of people. They're 2 different types of creators. So they're super different. I don't market them in the same way at all. But they're great. They both come with pros and cons, like humans. But they're awesome. I mean, they're like they both have their own place, and I think culture now. Bugha's got his place in the history books. I think Clix is moving into that nature of being like a true history book type creator that people will actually remember. He's not just a blip. I always think that's funny where people, no offense to any of the creators that have been popping for the last year, but Cody's been doing this for the last 6 years.
Yeah.
He's not new to the scene by any means, even though it's very easy today to put people who've been doing stuff for 12 months and say that they're a big creator, but it's like, yeah, they are, but they still have very like flimsy audiences because It's only been 12 months.
That's right. Yeah. And it's different in like the gaming space versus like, say you're a hot musician. Maybe you have one really good album and then you know your time comes and your time goes. But with gaming, you can really inject your own personality and your own skill levels, which will grow. You also grow with the industry. You adapt to it. And I think the ones that it can adapt to it best will have that longevity. What do you think are the qualities that give the creators the longevity that they need?
It's a really good question. I would say you have to be an entrepreneur in order to be a successful creator. I would say you can't overinvest your time into any one thing. The example of you can't overinvest your time into only being a competitive player and only doing competitive playing, like only playing in tournaments. So that's all you do, and that's everything to your career. You will not be successful in your career. I think just like that, you can't only do TikTok. You can't only do YouTube. You can't only be a Twitch streamer. You have to have this broad entrepreneurial spirit of I have to do everything. Now, what I do, when I do it, how I do it, if I'm good at it, that's all into the weeds. But I would definitely say you need to be entrepreneurial. You have to be very multifaceted, and then you have to be super resilient. And I'd say the fourth one would be like very confident. And I think that's a little counterintuitive to the nature of streamers is like, and again, broad stroke of just saying that the majority of people get into streaming because they are an introverted person that might not be extroverted out there hanging out with a ton of people. So where they find their communities is through this digital world, which I think is kind of switching now, which is very unique. Is the earlier people get involved with it, I think they're doing it for other reasons that they're not feeling forced to find community online. They want to find a community online. And I think that culture shift is what's making streaming and gaming and content creation a little more mainstream, is because it's not well, I guess I'll just go on the internet to go do something because I can't live in the real world.
That's
People
right.
are actually desiring to do it because they see more value doing it. And it's not an option B, it's an option A.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. For me personally, I try and do everything. Like I'm doing this podcast here. I'm starting my own podcast. I do DJing. I game show host. I try and do everything to connect, to show what I'm about to other people so that they can connect whenever level they want to. And I can entertain people in different ways. And I love trying new things and seeing how it works out and just, throwing the paint at the wall to see what happens and what you get, and also evolving with the industry and evolving with the audience, because the audience is obviously the most important part. What does it take to build your audience? Would you say from that perspective of creator?
It's like this weird dichotomy of it's the trying new things, it's the throwing paint on the wall and seeing kind of what color shows up.
Yeah.
But I'd also say it's figuring out once you see a color, you have to lean into it. So there's this weird approach of being super like strategic.
Yeah.
But also you have to try new things and you can't fall in love. I mean, and again, someone like Gary talks about it all the time, but it's this world of like, you can't be obsessed with the hate. And everyone always talks about, you can't don't read the comments. You have to read the comments, but like, just like you shouldn't be obsessed with the negativity that people spew your ways.
Yeah.
You can't be obsessed with the praise that people give you. You just have to be in the middle. And with content, to me, it's like very, very similar, where it's like, just because something's working really well doesn't mean that you drop everything to go do the one. You just have to, it's like, ooh, this is really working. I'm going to put more effort into it, but I can't forget about Snapchat. And I can't forget about Facebook, because now Facebook's coming back. And you have to be obsessed with failure, which I think is super, like, it's an interesting mindset to have, is like being very comfortable with a 5 viewed video and not letting that emotionally impact you, but objectively looking at metrics as, well, that didn't work.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you're a bad creator. It means that piece of content didn't work. But when you find a great piece of content, it's like, oh, Let me chart that as a good style of whatever I did in there.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to become obsessed to be like, ooh, I had a video get 250,000 views. It's like, yeah, just like you got one that had 5. So you just have to keep trying. So that's like that resiliency side of like, you just have to keep going, and people fall too in love with metrics. I don't want to get into it because we'll keep talking about it, but like,
Yeah.
and what's happening right now in the industry with folks is like everyone is justifying success based on metrics, which that's a part of success is great metrics. But if you become overly obsessive emotionally with your metrics, you are only setting yourself up for failure, because no creator has ever gone on a perfect straight line upward trajectory. It always goes up and then it goes down and then it goes up and then it goes down. It's a stock chart. But
Totally.
emotionally, companies run their companies unemotionally. So companies can become resilient to the up and down aspect. Creators fall in love with metrics. So when their metrics dip, their emotion is driven too much into it, that when you go from a 5K CCV to a 2.5K CCV, you see that emotionally as being so distraught that I'm failing in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But you can't think of it that way. But then you
right.
can't get comfortable with 2.5K. You got to get back up to 5K.
That's right.
So it's this like weird middle ground area that I think is like the mental stress but excitement as creators navigate those careers.
That is exactly that's all correct. Yeah. So I find that when I got rid of like the praise and blame game, then it's just like I'm just putting myself out there and I'm being generous. I'm giving to the audience. I'm not making it about me. It is me giving it to you, but I feel that being generous and making the audience the stars of the show has been what's really worked for me. So I found that once I did that, then everything started clicking, and then I was able to like not care if I failed or if I succeeded, or like being able to look at failure as something, okay, well, that just doesn't work. So it's better to lose it.
And that's the idea, is because you found a greater purpose than in the creator space right now. Purpose is driven by metrics and money.
Yeah.
Those two are overvalued from success in the landscape. But it's so funny in culture when someone like a Mr. Beast is literally just like throwing money at people that deserve or not deserve it. He's building homes for people all around the world. You get the hate porn that somehow pops up. So it's like, well, wait a second. I'm either making a tremendous amount of money and being kind of selfish with it, and I get hatred for it because I'm not giving back and I'm not empathetic and I'm just greedy. And then you've got the biggest person on earth that's literally just guzzling money and building and making the world so much better for whatever your subjective opinion is of it, who also is getting hated on because he's not doing enough. It's like that world of like, Jesus would have been hating on in 2024. It's a tough area to navigate, but you have to find a greater purpose than just metrics and money. And so many downfalls. I mean, the phase 30 for 30, doc just came out. So it's like kind of relevant to see guys that became obsessive over money and fame and stardom that not only impacted their professional career, it impacted their personal life. And to me, it's the same old story when you like learn history of celebrity status. It's not new. It's not new. It's just a new category, and the current actions and activities that people are taking are new. But the story of how it starts and how it finishes, or that chapter ends, it's the same thing. And I think people in the agency management space, I would say, is another like value proposition of, if creators are looking for agents to sign with or managers to work with, it's what I'm saying that I feel like is most valuable to talent that isn't spoken about enough, which is there's two sides to talent. I'll take Bugha or Clix. Kyle and Cody are just as important as Bugha and Clix.
That's right.
And if Kyle and Cody are depressed, angry, anxious, and not happy, there's only so much that I can do for the careers of Bugha and Clix. So if Kyle and Cody aren't right, I can't do anything with Bugha and Clix. But if your agent and manager in this navigating space doesn't see that, or doesn't realize that, or isn't checking in, or doesn't care, it's the first sign that in the way the business world works, I only eat unless my clients eat. They'll just keep eating and not realize that it's a short-term metrics of success, which is digital social metrics and money. And an agent is motivated by both of those because that is what they get paid on.
That's exactly right.
So it's this very strange, it's an industry thing that's currently going on, which is I'm incentivized by driving revenue. I don't care if they're depressed or sad. I don't care about that. Well, no, you should care about that, because if you have a long-term vision for your clients, what they do in the next 12 months will impact their next 24. It's a fun landscape. It's a really fun landscape to navigate, but it's not new. It's just a new industry.
Yeah, it's just a different frame for, the same kind of picture. But it is, yeah. So do you find yourself like getting into the personal lives of your clients and helping them from
like
there and then taking it to the next level?
And it's not even helping. Like, I always wanted to be a basketball coach.
Yeah.
That's what I always wanted to do. When I was in 8th grade, when I was in high school, when I was going into college, I always thought that I was going to get into coaching. So I use a lot of I'm talking about me. I don't like to talk about me all the time, but like you asked, the idea of who I am as a human is very derived from coaching.
Yes.
And working with raw talent, which is high school, college coaching, which are people that are looking for instruction, that think that they're the best. But when you're the best in high school and you get onto that Division I college team, all of your teammates were just as good as you. And when you're in college and you want to make it to the professional, it's like you realize that everyone on the team is there for a reason. That's where my DNA comes in of like, I like to help people navigate spaces in a way that the worst coach tells players what to do.
Yes.
That's not how you coach. You can't just tell people what to do. You have to motivate them to think that what they're doing, which is the right thing to do, is what they actually want to do. And they start to understand why it is that they're doing it. So not to get into a coaching seminar, but the way that I manage talent, I think Brycent and Bugha and Clix would tell you that my POV of how I manage them and talk to them about new revenue is balanced more with like life and content and relationships and networking and understanding your business. And like, that's where I thrive. Revenue's going to be there.
Yes.
But it can't be the driving factor of the majority of the relationship that you have with talent.
Otherwise, it comes across, and people are smart, and they will see when that does come across, whether it's subconsciously or consciously. So you really do have to have your intentions and your purpose in check for it to be able to translate to your audience, because they can tell whether or not you're being genuine.
Correct.
So I do want to know more about you. Where did you get your start? How did you, end up working with Gary or an AJ?
I always introduce myself, and I will even on stage. I'm a recovering basketball addict. So that was my life. I did that until my sophomore year, junior year of college. So went through the realms, played at the Nike EYBL, got a scholarship to play basketball. My goal was to be a professional player, overseas. I'm going to get to the NBA, and then get into coaching. That's what I always wanted to do. But marketing and business was always in my core, with the relationship and the influence that my parents had on me. Like Mad Men was like my all-time favorite show. When I got into college, I had a ton of knee operations through high school and college, which is what ended my career. I got into music for a little bit. I was like selling beats online, I was making content. I started to, that was my like entrepreneurial like outside of basketball passion.
Yes.
And I just started to really fall in love with content and consumer behavior and what worked and what didn't work. And I just fell in love with that interest. When I graduated from school, I worked in digital media, which was in 2014, which was still like early stage Facebook business manager.
Yep.
And I was just like really intrigued at the nuances and the depth of a platform like that. And then about a year later, one of my best friends at the time, still one of my best friends today, Tyus Jones, got drafted to the NBA. So Tyus asked me if I could just help him and be kind of his guy and business manager to do everything that he was doing as just a trusted confidant friend who also had this innate business acumen that I could also help him in his career, not just manage his career. So I got thrown into this like wild world of pinch me, I'm dreaming of like, I'm working with an NBA athlete and talking to agents. This was like, it was a dream come true. Once I sobered up from the excitement of doing it, I started to spotlight, like any business entrepreneur, it's like you find problems and think you have a solution for them. So I found a lot of problems in the way that I thought athletes were being marketed and managed by their agency, like the lack of proactive content and brand building, which I understood and learned from the music industry from 2010, 2009 to 2014, in my opinion, would be like the era of the indie artist, of F the system, 360 deals and all this other stuff. So like that was this early stage of independent artists becoming megastars because of social media, because now distribution was democratized and it wasn't just radio. So the way that I saw athletes being managed was like 360 deals, where you've got one person that manages all inbound opportunities for you. If you're the best player, you're getting marketing. And in my mind, it's like Tyus was a late first round draft pick. He wasn't playing in his rookie year, but he's a biracial, good student, good reputation, smart kid. He got drafted to the Minnesota Timberwolves. He grew up in Minnesota, so he's the home. All these things are like, as a marketing person, I'm like salivating at the opportunity to go pitch and sell this.
Perfect.
But at the time, his agency wasn't doing that.
Connecting with it.
But this device was his greatest opportunity, but he wasn't being coached and taught how to use it to build a narrative and a message and a brand, et cetera, et cetera. So long story short, I chicken scratched the business model and sold it into an advertising agency in Minneapolis and ended up getting hired there to start a sports and entertainment division that worked with athletes. That was a pipeline, but then also the flywheel aspect of new business to the agency was the thought of, I'm just going to use Coke as the example because it's a sponsor. If the agency wanted to work with Coke, I would have to reach out to say, hey, how's it going? I'm an account director at Morse Code. This is our creative services and resources of what we can provide. And Coke's going to throw you to the back of the list because every creative agency in the world is reaching out to Coke.
Yeah.
If I reach out about Tyus Jones, the hometown hero, just won a national championship at Duke, he's on the cover of Sports Illustrated, I get a chance to get in front of Coke because, I'm making all this up. The senior director of marketing was a Duke alumni, and he really wants to meet Tyus.
Yeah.
I'm indirectly selling our agency by way of working with Tyus, because now I can say, listen, you want to work with it? Yeah, well, great. Like this is who we are, and but I'm indirectly selling myself. So that was the flywheel that I did at this agency for a little over 3 years of working with athletes, but then also just new business and creative marketing with sports and entertainment, connecting brands to culture. Yeah. That's how I found gaming, because I was finding super non-disruptive ways for athletes to work with brands that didn't cause them to have to fly and travel and do all these things. Like, what if you put Coke on this thing called Twitch and the athlete would stream it? It was interesting. So I understood what Discord was, and I found Twitch, and I was just cold outreaching to PlayStation and Microsoft, and I was learning the industry. As a gamer, I knew nothing about the business side. Ninja played Fortnite with Drake, Juju Smith, and Travis Scott, and that was the light bulb moment for me. Like, that's kind of what I'm exactly thinking of, where I'm like, why, if I take non-endemic celebrities and connect them with the celebrities of gaming, you create a really awesome content experience that a brand like Coke would love to get in the center and foster that content. 6 months later, a startup company was reaching out to get Tyus involved for an investment and being an early founder of this company. I vetted out the opportunity, and I ended up getting hired as the first employee of this company called Wombo Sports in 2018. That was all around athletes that played video games. We were the team and org to help get them set up. So like Seth Curry, Tyus, Monte Morris, Malik Monk, Josh Okogie, Harrison Smith. We had this like rock star dozen
stacked
to almost like getting into like a baker's dozen to 2 dozen athletes in 2018 going into 2019. And we were there gaming or getting them set up. I ended up butting heads with the founders a little bit at the end of 2019. I ended up leaving. Backtrack to 2015, my business strategy for Tyus, and it still works today. So anybody listening that wants to biz dev their way of working with talent, I went to LinkedIn and followed the away schedule for the Minnesota Timberwolves and would reach out I'd go to LinkedIn and geofence the city, they were alumni of Duke or Fuqua School of Business. And in their title was marketing. And I would see what the brands were, and I'd reach out on an in-mail with Tyus Jones on the front, and see if they'd reach out. And, I'm coming into your city. I wasn't coming into your city. I'm coming into your city next week. Like, I would love to connect with you for a coffee or a drink to chat about ways we can work together. And anyone who was a Duke fan at that time knew who Tyus Jones was. Yeah. That was my biz dev way. Well, I listened to Gary's podcast when I was in college. So when Tyus was going to New York, I did my thing, and Gary at VaynerMedia.com, Tyus Jones, like, hey, coming to the city, would love to connect, jam in the office, whatever. Tyler Schmidt, who was his assistant at the time, reached back out right away and said, hey, like, would love to connect. Gary and Tyus didn't end up connecting, but Tyler and I connected, and we had some mutual friends and relationships with some old high school buddies, whatever. Now Tyler and I became really good friends that over the course of the next 5 years, we would share a lot of relationships back and forth. I would come into the city with Tyus' younger brother, Trey, coming into Duke. We'd go out to Duke games, and they would come in and play at MSG. And we just had a really good relationship. So when I left my previous company, I reached back out to Tyler as a friend because it's like I was in gaming, but I like sports and I like marketing. What do you think I should do, sort of thing? And Tyler at the time was working with Bugha after he won the Fortnite World Cup. And they were exploring a representation arm of Vayner somewhere to represent, at the time, esports athletes. So I got introduced, I reconnected with AJ and got introduced to our former CMO at VaynerSports at the top of 2020. And we just jammed on gaming and what a position could look like, and just kind of shot the you-know-what. And by the end of March, early April, I got offered a job to start the gaming vertical at VaynerSports, and was kind of the beginning of representing gamers and esports athletes in 2020. And then we went into a global lockdown, and the rest is history. So I've been there for a little over 4 years. We represent 3 clients. We kind of have signed a new talent every year. Super boutique, like I said at the start. We've done, I think, like case study-esque work with someone like a Bugha. We're building our case study here with Clix. We've Brycent and the work that he's doing in a new tech space like Web3 has been awesome. So, and then now gaming in general, just at Vayner, spearheading the topic and conversation across just VaynerSports, but into VaynerMedia side of the business with the new platforms like a Fortnite and a Roblox and kind of like everything new. That's where I'm at, kind of floating in that sea.
That is an incredible story. And definitely the through line that I noticed there is like you were always like holding tight to your passions. And then that is what all like led you through to each step of it. And you were also super ambitious, just messaging people on LinkedIn, and another thing was just like genuine friendship, just like led you to where you wanted to be. So that's an incredible story. I'm really glad that you went into all that detail about it, and it's fantastic to hear. And it's really good to like know that is why you did. It's not because you wanted to make a bunch of money or you wanted to be, the most successful person ever, or you still will be. But the fact that it comes from a genuine place.
Well, that's the thing. Like, and the biggest thing I could take away, because I feel like I'm talking too much now. But
no, keep going.
The idea of like, I think the biggest thing that I could take away from I'm 32 years old. I'm not talking like I'm 70 and retiring. I have a long, long career left in me, but being able to get to where I'm at 32, maybe an outsider would say, man, that would be so awesome to be able to work with the people that I'm working with and all this other stuff. I don't feel like people do enough networking in the space. And a lot of people, quote unquote, network, but it's with the same people over and over and over again. And it's because they feel comfortable. And I feel like there's a lot of young kids. And again, like I get reached out to all the time. You just asked me to be on this podcast, and like without 2 seconds, I was like, yeah, sure.
You were like, yes, and I was so grateful.
I've never declined anybody reaching out to me for a podcast, literally. And you show me a receipt of you reaching out for a podcast and me saying no, I would love for someone to show me that, because it wasn't me.
Yeah.
I say yes to so much stuff that I shouldn't. And there's pros and cons to that, because I have a lot of stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
But the idea of that's my core. I want to meet people. I want to talk with people. I get people from all different colleges to reach out to me to want to connect for 15 to 30 minutes. I'll spend 45 minutes with somebody that I shouldn't spend 45 minutes with because they add no value to my life today, but I like it. That's where I feel like kids that are 18 to 23, they're not doing it enough, or them reaching out to 10 to 20 people on LinkedIn that are VP level folks and them getting 0 responses back and going 0 for 10, and then them going, wow, guess it doesn't work. Or a content editor on Twitter sending 8 DMs to the biggest esports gaming creators on earth asking to do edits and content for them, and they don't get back, and they're like, well, this doesn't work. And it's like, no. There is no excuse for you not to get an at-bat. It's 0.
Love it.
There's absolutely 0. And even people in their local town, like you've got people that play video games at a high level. If you're a content editor, go edit their videos and make a TikTok account. Like, there's no excuse. It's just, it's the only thing that truly bothers me in this space is the impatience of people in their careers. It's crazy. It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
And it's very sad. And in the esports space, if you're a player, if you want to be on operations and management, not everybody can manage Bugha and Clix. And I'm not oblivious to that. It's awesome. But I'm also really good at my job. And I position me managing Bugha and Clix was again, I'm a religious guy, a little bit of God, a little bit of luck, and a little bit of me.
Yeah.
Like, you combine all those together and you get possibility and opportunity. But it took me 10 years to get here, and thousands of this and hundreds of that and another thousands of that. You have to do and meet so many different people and take risks and chances. I left a stable job to join a startup company in a brand new thing that I knew nothing about. Like, I left working with an athlete to go join. You left here to go there. You go sign people. You have to take risks. But players in the space, content creators in the space, people that want to get into management, like, go manage a no-named Fortnite player who's competing FNCS right now.
Yeah.
And go help them build an online platform for YouTube and Twitter and Instagram. And then do that for a year, and then build it to 20,000 subscribers and followers, and then leverage that to then get in front of someone else. And then everything is in building blocks. You can't just get it. Everything is like a step-by-step process. Anyway, super long tangent, but it's frustrating.
No, all those things you're saying are valid, and I love the detail that you put into it. So it's fantastic. And so maybe you could coach me a little bit. So I've had various success. I've seen different levels. Every year, I find that whatever I had as an ambition the year before starts coming true. But during that year, you're gunning for the next year thing and the next year thing. So I've been doing a lot of different things, as I explained before, and I have all these different talents, but I'm just trying to amalgamate them. I'm also starting a new podcast where I do this, but I also ask trivia questions of people based on whatever they like. So what do you think the best thing I can do is to take it to the next level, be more successful, other than what you've talked about?
It's funny, the guy's walking around.
Yeah.
That normally comes to the speakers.
Yeah.
I would. My big question would be, what does success look like to you?
Success is just being able to sustain myself financially and do all the things I love. This is what I'm doing right now. I feel like this is success to me. And I love being able to connect with people in the esports space.
So that's it. You're doing it.
I'm doing it, yeah. The financials could be better, and then
then this isn't success to you. You want to be bigger.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Which, to me, if you want to be bigger in your position as a creator, it means that because you want to reach more people.
Yeah, I see. So, yeah.
Because you think that with your message, if you reach more people, you can make a bigger impact.
Yeah.
And if you make a bigger impact, then that leads to more people listening to you, which means you can make a bigger impact on those. I mean, that's the flywheel aspect of content creation, right?
Yes.
And you get to a certain point that you might feel like you've hit a barrier of, I'm not growing anymore, and how can I grow more?
Exactly.
But if you're innate, if you want to be a celebrity, you've got the wrong DNA. And people fall into that. They want to be famous to be famous. They don't know what to do with their fame.
Yeah, I don't want that.
But if you actually want to create an impact, you have to figure out how big you want to be, because you're doing a podcast. What's the name of the podcast?
This is the EsportsNext official podcast.
Oh, so this is literally the EsportsNext official podcast. So the EsportsNext official podcast, again, I have no idea how big it can be, but just to get my point across, it will only be as big as esports, so to speak, right? Like, you've niched yourself into this specific category, which isn't bad or good. It is what it is. Yeah. There are only so many people that are going to want to listen. So your total addressable market of listeners is capped at some level.
Yes.
That's where I would start, is to figure out how many potential people do I think in this industry I can actually get to listen, and then backtrack your way from there. Obviously, you're not going to get the total addressable market of esports to listen to your podcast, because there's so many nuances. But I would start there, and then figure out, how you can create alternative content. And then you get into like the tactics of like, how am I actually growing? Us just doing this podcast means nothing.
Yes.
People don't find podcasts on podcasts. There's very few people that find it endemically in the platform itself. But what's the short content that you'll create from it?
Yeah. So I'm looking to I have like a trivia background. I love pop culture and sharing about that. And I think like game show hosting is kind of like me at my most natural, because
I get more creative. Like, I think people need to create long form content with a short content strategy.
Yes.
Of like, what in the content am I making right now that's going to work well on social? Yeah. I don't think people think about that enough. And then I'd also get creative into like kind of the segments and the editing and the production of this long form content, of like, what is it that you're doing on the show? Yeah. Because if you just have content about content's sake, it feels great because there's a lot of substance and it's super valuable. But you have to get people to care and believe and trust that if they do take the hour to listen to this, that it's going to be worthwhile. It's really, really difficult. I'd also say your own personal brand. Yeah. Like, people leverage the property more than they do the individual. And that's an old school radio way to build listeners. Yeah. Is because distribution only came from the radio. I listened to K106 in the morning. With Darren, and everyone knows me, but they're a fan of K106 because I might go on at 11 or at 8 during my commute in, but at 5 on my commute out, it's K108 with Rebecca. But I'm just listening to K108, and hosts come and go. But what social has done to that is very similar to what it did with athletes and what it did with musicians, is it puts more equity in the human behind it, which people want to listen to people. So what's your content online that is in addition to this content, that you're creating face recognition, you're creating voice recognition, that you're not doing it just with EsportsNext Podcast, but you're building your own personal brand, which indirectly, if you become a celebrity because people love your content online, anything you touch will be somewhat successful. Great. Yeah. So to me, it's all of those, but I would lean very heavy in your own personal brand.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. So I want to be able to get talk about different topics that I could do trivia about, have little trivia questions as clips like YouTube shorts or TikToks or whatever, and then be able to have personalize it. So it's like me having a conversation with anyone about like a movie I just watched, a show, or a topic of interest, that kind of thing. So I think that is the direction that I'm going in, and it's been fun to start, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But thank you so much for
You're welcome.
Everything you've done, and I won't keep you any longer. You've been so gracious with your time, and I hope you have a wonderful time at EsportsNext. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.